this is yours. It's on all the time.
Yeah, they just heard you say all that.
Stream is live.
Thank you. That's great.
We're just conversing. We call this meeting to order. We'll start off with a Pledge of Allegiance, followed by an invocation from Marshall.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bow your heads with me, please. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this evening and the opportunity to gather together as like-minded individuals and community leaders in order to look at the fruitfulness of moving forward with certain projects that would help our community. We thank you for the beautiful spring weather that you're bringing to the Ozarks and ask that you give us wisdom and discernment tonight. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Thank you, Marshall. Madam Clerk, would you do roll call vote, please?
Lucas. Present. Denham.
Here.
Cooper.
Here.
Milton.
Here.
Howden.
Here.
LeBlanc.
Here.
Schultz.
Here.
Your Honor, you have a quorum. Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 6441, an ordinance approving the documents related to 6 affordable housing development projects with DHTC Development LLC to apply for Department of Economic Development CDBG DR housing program funds and authorizing the mayor to execute the documents related thereto.
You've heard the first reading of Bill Number 6441. We will begin with a staff report from Alex.
Well, good evening, board, members of the audience. Appreciate you being here today for our special meeting. This is a very important and special item before you. Obviously, our community is dealing a lot with availability of affordable housing, right, and housing for workforce and other community members. This is an important step to address that, to do our part as a city, and to partner with the private entities and development community to make this a reality. So what you're going to have in front of you tonight, and I'm just going to give you a brief overview. We have 2 developers here this evening, one of which, Elevate Branson, has 2 projects. You're going to be asked to consider 2 resolutions and the development agreements that are associated with it. And you also have DHTC. They're also a development company, and they are going to have 6 projects in front of you. So there's a large number of projects that are coming in front of you. To give you an idea, number of units, DHTC is proposing 72 units, and Elevate Branson has 38 units they're proposing across their projects. It's important to recognize our role as a city in this and how we got to this point. CDBG disaster relief funding is what we're talking about. This is funding that was appropriated by the feds, HUD, for disaster relief recovery funding for the 2017 flooding and straight line wind events that occurred in our region. So this funding addresses 5 unique zip codes in distressed areas here, and that's what this funding is going to be used for, to help with the affordable housing aspect. In particular, these grants are really geared towards long-term recovery, restoration of infrastructure, and revitalization of the area for presidentially declared disasters. According to DED, there's about $25 million worth of funding that's available. So the amount of funding you see tonight will be competing for that. Applications close May 17th. So that's why we have a special meeting this evening to get this approved and considered by the board, so it can go on to the next step and ultimately get applied and hopefully, right, awarded. The important thing to know about these funds, the city is the applicant. So it's the city's credibility, it's the city's responsibility, right, in administering these funds in partnership with SIMCOG, our regional partner. But ultimately, the city is signing on the dotted line, per se, when it comes to these funds. That's really important to know to make sure that the city and respective taxpayers, of course, are protected should the unlikely and hopefully that doesn't happen, but unfortunate event, one of these projects doesn't get built or doesn't get completed or something happens. So we took our time in consultation with SIMCOG to really come up with a developers agreement that not only protects the city and our interests, but also is respective to the development community to make sure that there's provisions that can allow this to move forward. So we were very diligent in looking at the pro forma. We were very diligent in looking at the cost for infrastructure or site costs, And we felt we've put together a pretty good package in that respect. So that's something I think that we really need to pay attention to as we sign on the dotted line, as you all consider these grants, is to take a good look at that and make sure that we're being protected as a city as we try to address the affordable housing and grant need. To give you just a quick overview of the grants, so at least 51% of the rental units should be low-income units rented to households with an adjusted gross income of 80% or less of the area median income. The projects must be completed within 3 years. The total amount of CDBG DR funding allocated to the applicant is not to exceed $2.5 million. Absent of other professional services, there is, such as engineering, architectural, administration, construction, attorney fees, et cetera, can be stacked on top of that, and you'll see that reflected in some various projects throughout one of the developers' projects. The last thing I just wanted to mention, there are a number of uses. So the last thing I wanted to mention was HUD actually has on an annual basis income limits. So we've made sure to, of course, address that inside of our developer agreement. So with that, I'd like to recognize DHTC, Deborah Hart, Riley Shantz. And I also wanted to give a special shout out to SIMCOG, Kelsey Burton and Garrett. They've been great partners in making sure that we have a grant administration process put in place, and they're able to help us throughout the entire process of hopefully getting these grants awarded. So thank you very much, and welcome, Deborah and Riley.
So I want to echo what Alex said. The true heavy lifting on these grant applications has been done by SIMCOG, and Garrett and Kelsey have done a yeoman's task, and so we're very appreciative of that. I know you have seen our projects before because you did the letters of support or resolutions of support for those. So I'll just talk a little bit about DHTC, our experience working in this arena, and then I'll let you ask us questions. So I'm Debbie Hart. I always tell people I'm a recovering lawyer. I started developing affordable housing in 2008. Since then, we've developed about 1,000 units of affordable housing in Missouri, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. The reason that's important is because the tax credit program is very similar to the CDBG DR program. It's obviously a government program, but there are compliance requirements and very specific things that you have to do to follow the rules to get the money. So we seem to have figured that out, so that's a good thing. We are happy to say that we have completed 2 projects recently in Branson. The first of those is Fall Creek Townhomes. Fall Creek Townhomes was actually financed with low-income housing tax credits and CDBG DR funding, the same funding that we're getting here. This program is a little different because it is not combined with a tax credit application, which I think ultimately is good news for Branson because the tax credit world is so competitive, and it's really difficult for Branson to receive more than one application funded each year. This project, or these projects, we have 6, would be 72 total units. Those 72 units are going to be scattered around your community, not all in one place, which we think tells a really good story for the community. The other thing that tells a good story is that the LIHTC program actually is limited to individuals and families earning 60% and less of the area median income. The CDBG DR program allows the rents to go up to 80%. And while that doesn't seem like it's a huge amount, that actually is a meaningful number. When you have 2 parents in a working household which are working in service-related jobs, even though they don't make a lot of money, sometimes they are just barely over income for 60% units. And so this project, or these projects, will give us an opportunity to serve those individuals, which is obviously a great need in Branson. The other thing I wanted to let you know, We obviously, the other project too that we just completed is Bluff View, and that project is just off Gretna Road. Both of those projects are, again, all LIHTC. These projects will also have a market rate component, and when I say market rate, that's not true market rate. It's going to be still a discounted number. They just will not be capped based on the 80% HUD income limits. We think that is also positive for the community because it creates some socioeconomic diversity within the projects. The other thing that I think is worth mentioning, we have an established relationship with obviously our management company. We also have a relationship with the Rudas, who have an extensive management portfolio in Branson. So the key about CDBG DER that I think is the big takeaway, as Alex just mentioned, for you, I think your question is, I want to make sure that these projects get built. The thing that I think assures that to you the best is that CDBG DER does not pay in advance. They pay actually after we have submitted and processed the draw, and then they reimburse us. So that guarantees you that actual work is being done. Obviously, we will have to have a lender in place, and our lender will require a completion guarantee and financial guarantees in order to make that loan. I feel like I've said a lot of words, but I want to be judicious and mindful of your time. But Riley and I would be happy to answer any specific questions you have if there's something that I've not talked about that you'd like to know.
Do we have where the locations of these 6 locations are?
Yes, I think they're in the developer's agreement, but I think that they were in the resolutions that you did of support. Roughly, the locations are 2 adjacent to Fall Creek, the townhome development that I just mentioned. 2 are adjacent, well, it's a project that's not done yet, but a project called Cedar Ridge, which is off of 248. The other project is off, what's the name of that road?
Spring Creek Road. And then the last one is by Bluffview Apartments, which is Rosalie, kind of Gretna and Rosalie meet.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
so I understand the 6 projects and the grant requirements it's got to be complete in 3 years. Can you kind of lay out what you see as your build schedule for the 6?
Yeah, I think, we're going to discuss after they get awarded, how many that is, if we get 1, if we get 6, and that'll maybe change our plans depending on how many of those we get awarded. But our typical build schedule for a 45-unit project has been about 14 months in Branson, depending on infrastructure and rock. The majority of these sites are not as infrastructure intensive, but we're going to phase them based on absorption. Obviously, we'll meet the 3-year requirement, but we'll probably roll the starts by a couple months, and that way the units can come online at different times, and we can make sure we get them absorbed appropriately.
Thank you. And then when I look at the funding proposals for each of the projects, it looks like you're planning loans from outside sources outside of the grant for $588 to $650K per project.
Yeah, that's correct. So we will get a revolving line of credit construction loan, more or less. That loan will fund draws that will then be reimbursed by the DED grant funding. That will confirm, along with SimCog, that the grant funds are going to actual sticks and bricks to build these projects. Once we get to completion, the $500,000 to $600,000 you mentioned will be a permanent loan that the project will support, just based off its income and revenue.
And are those loans already secured or guaranteed?
We have commitments from Horizon Bank. They're most notably affordable housing lender in Nebraska who we've done some business with, but we will go out and get firm commitments once these are awarded.
Then I noticed that in the agreement in the agreement for the grant, that the city obviously has an interest in ensuring that you complete these projects, because it not only is a question of getting the affordable housing available in the area if you fail to complete the project for any reason, which we wouldn't anticipate, but if you would fail, it would reflect on the city's reputation and ability to secure future grants of this nature. So I understand that in the agreement, you've agreed to a 100% performance bond for the difference between the grant amount and your stated loan amount?
So the bonding is something that we've been talking with the city about. It was asked by the city to have a 100% bond for what you just said, the difference between the project cost and the grant amount, so more or less the perm debt. I think that that is acceptable. Another requirement, though, that we're dealing with in conjunction with this is DED also has asked for a bond, which is 100% of the grant amount. So those two combined is a 100% bond. However, it becomes, a pretty hard transaction, it's hard to bank. A lender's going to look at that as their total exposure and being over 100% LTV. So we have talked with DED about that 100% bond. When we built Fall Creek Townhomes, we only had a 15% letter of credit, and we've done always letter of credits versus a bond. So we are pushing to do a 15% letter of credit for the grant amount, and the topic with the city was after award date, we would finalize the bonding amount, or in lieu of do a letter of credit for the difference of what you just mentioned, which is the perm debt.
Yeah, I see we have a provision in there as an alternate for a letter of credit, but I'm not comfortable with negotiating it below the 100%.
I'm sorry, you said you're not comfortable negotiating? I think from our perspective, we can live with and the transaction can support a letter of credit for what the city's asking for, which is 100% of the perm debt amount. But in order for that to get done, we do need to discuss with DED the 100% letter of credit on the grant amount, because it does have to get financed by a lender, and that makes it challenging to do so.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and hopefully you're successful on that. But from my perspective with the city, it would
Sure.
be 100%.
I understand your concern. I think, this may give you some additional comfort. The fact that the payment in arrears, I think, is something to consider. We'll hold 10% retainage on all subs throughout the life of the project. They both have healthy budgets, healthy contingency. The developer fees that will be paid won't be drawn until completion, so it'll be additional contingency. And I think that should provide a little bit greater level of comfort as well.
I agree with you. I think that's all, but that's already baked in, and then the bond, right? I mean, in the end, if for some reason you fail to complete, I don't want the city to be holding the bag to finish the project.
Yeah, I think we can, the bonding is not something we've done, but the letter of credit, which I think is a similar instrument for that total sum, is something we can live with.
Great, glad to hear that. Perfect, thank you.
Deborah, you have already built a reputation in our town, right, for your performance. I know that, like you said, usually only one project or sometimes two projects get funded. With this one, is the 6 projects, is that under one application?
No. Each of these applications will be separate to DED. So that's why when we say SIMCOG has been doing some heavy lifting, they've been doing some heavy lifting. So we'll have 6 separate grant applications. And the reason that we structure, well, they're structured that way for 2 reasons. Number one, the grant amount was up to a maximum of $2.5 million. So we had to limit the application to maximize the value of the grant. The second is because even if that was not true, it would be a big absorption question for all of these to be in, even if DED said you can add all of those together and just do one project. We don't think that's in the best interest of Branson or in our best interest, because we think it's best to phase these to allow absorption appropriately and not to have a glut in the market that would impact other projects.
Okay, so this is new to me. So what I'm hearing you say is that if 72 units came online, there's not a demand or a waiting list for that, to absorb that many units?
Oh, no, there's absolutely a demand in Branson. I don't have any concern about that, but it's a yeoman's task, and we've done it now twice. We've done it with our project, our 30 units at Fall Creek, and we've done it with Bluffview. You know, those have leased up within 30 days.
Yeah.
So I'm not concerned about the demand. I'm just concerned about the timing and the manpower it takes. So no concern about the demand at all.
Okay, fair enough. Any other questions from the board?
I don't have a question, but I have follow-up to this.
Go ahead.
No other questions? I'd like to do this after the questions.
Well, the next thing we're going to do is vote, so.
Then,
it's
Mr.
time to
Mayor,
ask you a question.
first, I want to thank you guys for putting together the proposal. I think it suits well with what we're trying to get done in Branson. I really appreciate the work that's gone into this, and I think it'll be a great project for Branson. Hopefully you get all 6, and we can
From
score
your
a
lips
home
to
run.
God's ears.
Yep, so I thank you for that. Mr. Mayor, when I look at this, I think I have to thank Alex for his introduction because I've heard comments, it's nothing more than the city, essentially approving the grant applications, and then we're kind of hands off, and it's exactly the opposite of that. I think our staff has already invested well over 100 hours in this project alone so far, and we're not even submitted yet. When you take a look, I asked for an estimate of our administrative costs for this once these grants are given. If we were to hit a home run on all these grants, we'd probably be upwards of close to $500,000 of expenses to run this thing. So, and that's the city's part. And obviously, there's a lot of other expenses spread around too. So I think this is a significant event for the city. I think the $500,000 or whatever it turns out to be is well worth it for the city also if this helps us get serious headwind on our housing issues. I agree with that. I think the biggest issue I have is this bonding issue, but since they've agreed that the bond and the irrevocable letter of credit will be for 100% of the loan amount, I'd like to then officially amend the document in front of us, so I would move an amendment.
So sorry, just really quick, we need to get it on the floor first,
Oh,
and then
sorry, go ahead.
the amendment.
Yep, sorry, I'm working on the old agenda.
I know, it's all right.
Yeah, see?
Yeah, see, I did it.
See?
See?
So do I have a motion approving this bill?
So move.
I have a second.
Okay, now, if I may.
Did you get a second, Hill?
I'd like to amend
Thank
the
you.
motion to say that relative to the documents, let me get the right name for the document here. Relative to exhibits, the pre-selection contracts, no, I'm sorry, that's not the right ones.
And I think the text we're looking for is on page 2.
No, it's on page 5 of the documents, I believe. Page 5, and it says, where it says, page 5, paragraph 5, section 5, paragraph 1, says, in lieu of performance bonds, the developer may provide an irrevocable letter of credit in a form and amount reasonably acceptable to the subapplicant. I would like to see the in a form and amount reasonably acceptable struck from those 6 agreements, so that it's clear that the irrevocable letter of credit is for the full amount.
So Hill,
But before,
for procedure,
oh, sorry, excuse me. I want to make a comment before you guys vote. If we're making an amendment, we would prefer that the letter of credit amount burn off at completion when they are complete. I think that's a reasonable concession and what a lender would agree to.
Actually, as as we are completing the project and we have more dollars actually in, we would not want that 100% to stay in place until the very end. As construction draws go through, we would like that to be a declining amount, because otherwise we're going to put ourselves in the same situation with our lender that we are when we're over 100%.
And I'll let you work that detail out with the city staff.
Okay, well, I just wanted to be clear about that, so it wouldn't be for the entire life of the construction. It would decline as the completion was getting closer. So I'm sorry,
Thank you for that.
we didn't want to interrupt, but we didn't know what to do.
No. That was a very appropriate interruption.
Yeah, good point.
As clarification, we did not put those terms in the form so that we would have that ability. Of course, that's been the direction of both city administration and this board, that we be as assistive as possible. And so that is the desire. As Alder Schultz had stated, the desire is just for the protection, and there would be no need for the protection when the finances have been paid.
So that's my motion, Mr. Mayor, to strike those, the phrase "in a form and amount reasonably acceptable."
And just to clarify, that was for exhibits 8 through 13. Is that correct, Alderman Schultz?
Yes, thank you.
Second.
Before we go too far, just another clarification. At the end of the first sentence of
Yeah.
that paragraph, it would define bank proceeds by putting that in parentheses and capitalized, so that in that amendment for 100% of the bank proceeds, it defines that, because they're on different pages in a couple of them, and so that's why we worded it that way.
So Holly, to follow your lead, what should we change to this amendment that's being proposed?
The amendment, as he read it, we have it in writing on a piece of paper, so we meet the requirements of the statutes and of the ordinances. As long as everybody understands what we are saying, that we are defining within the exhibit of the ordinance, in the developer's agreements, we have defined bank proceeds as that in Exhibit D in the table, which is the second thing. Sometimes it's the bottom of page 1, sometimes it's the top of page 2, but we define in that paragraph bank proceeds by putting it in parentheses afterwards, and then we are adding in the second sentence the word "for 100% of the bank proceeds," striking "in a form and amount reasonably acceptable."
Is there an electronic version available for the board to
Yeah.
review here?
It's just on the guide, scripted.
You want me to read what it, yes.
Thank you.
It reads I move to amend Bill number 6441 by amending exhibits 8 through 13, the Development Agreement, Section 1, subsection A-5, by identifying the bank proceeds with a term, in parentheses, bank proceeds, at the end of the first sentence, and restating the second sentence to read, in lieu of performance bonds, the developer may provide an irrevocable letter of credit for 100% of the bank proceeds to sub-applicant.
Okay, Mayor, isn't there already a motion?
There
Second?
is.
So you have to withdraw. This is your thing, not mine. Take it
Are
away,
you?
Madam
Is that what
Clerk.
you said, Alderman Schultz? No.
I don't think I said it in that complete form.
Well, yeah, but I think, wouldn't we want to add that burn-off rate as they draw?
That would be a term of the letter of credit, and we have that ability in this ordinance to effectuate your desires of this in the acceptability of it, and we'll follow that direction of the board. I don't think either party has a belief that we intend to do anything different, and this is kept in on YouTube, so anyone can hold us accountable. But I don't believe there's a concern with that. That would be in the form, if you opt for the letter of credit, that would be in the form of the letter of credit. And this ordinance pursuant to, I think it's Section 2, provides for that opportunity.
Deborah, you okay with that?
know what the motion is at this point. But he doesn't, but there was already a motion and second on the floor, so. there's
Yes,
still-
I think we're fine. What we want is, and I think we're on the same page, where we're saying that as the amount of the outstanding amount goes down, we want the letter of credit to reduce appropriately. And I think you all are saying that. I think we're fine. And now we've got it on YouTube with all of us saying it's fine.
There you go. So just to clarify the motion, it's, so Alderman Schultz, could we withdraw the motion of the second and start over? I'm sorry, just to make sure there were two motions stated, just
Yeah.
to make sure Holly said a bunch
okay
of
with that?
stuff, just to make sure that we have
So I
everything we
withdraw.
need.
Withdraw.
Now let's start again with what we're,
So,
You want this motion? Okay. I move to amend Bill number 6441 by amending Exhibits 8 through 13, the Development Agreements, Section 1, subsection A-5, by identifying the bank proceeds with the term, in parentheses, bank proceeds, at the end of the first sentence and restating the second sentence to read, in lieu of performance bonds, the developer may provide an irrevocable letter of credit for 100% of the bank proceeds to sub-applicant.
Second.
so, we have a motion and a second. Hill, you're good?
yes, thank you very much.
Any members of the board wishing to speak regarding this amendment? Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this amendment? Then let's please vote on the amendment.
All those in favor?
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? Ayes have it.
Okay, the result of the vote is 6-0, and
And that was for the amendment.
yes, correct. So now we just need to
Any
vote, yep, nope, you got this, you got it, good job.
You want to trade seats?
Nope, I don't, you've got this.
Any member of the Board of Aldermen wishing to speak regarding the bill as amended? Anybody in the audience wishing to speak to the bill as amended? Let's vote on the bill as amended. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Ayes have it.
And I do believe there's a double read being requested.
Yep, Your Honor, I move to read Bill number 6441 in its final reading due to timing.
We have a motion and a second. Any members of the board wishing to address this matter? Anybody in the audience? We're approving to have a second read. So let's vote on that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. So, Madam Clerk, would you please provide the introduction for this final reading?
Your Honor, this is a final reading of Bill number 6441, an ordinance approving the documents related to 6 affordable housing development projects with DHTC Development LLC to apply for Department of Economic Development CDBG DR housing program funds and authorizing the mayor to execute the documents related thereto.
So you've heard the final reading of Bill number 6441. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any members of the board wishing to address this?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
You know, with all the organizations involved, I just want to say what a collaborative effort it's been, you know, and I know at times that it's been a heavy lift for a lot of people and a lot of hours and things like that. But, you know, it's that yeoman's task you keep talking about. It's the responsibility that we take as being public servants and being developers and being of people that want to improve the community and provide this type of housing. And, you know, this is what this community has been needing for a very, very long time, a very long time. Mr. Ruda, you've been trying to do it for a very, very long time. And, you know, and we appreciate that. And most importantly is, you know, the level of cooperation with our city staff and the respect that is being learned and earned, I guess I could say. So to this project, you know, I wish it all the best. I see great things in it. I see great opportunities in it. And, you know, to everyone involved, thank you so much for the work you're doing, because in the end, we just want to provide for this community and make it a better place. And, you know, and with that, we're setting that new standard of how this community moves forward and how it does things. And it does it in a cooperative, collaborative, organized manner, you know, and that's been needed for a long time. So you guys have really set the bar with this. And, you know, for everyone that comes behind, whether it's you or another developer, we at least have the templates down, and we have the level of expectation as a board, as a staff, for those people that come behind you guys. And, you know, what better group to do this? You guys have the experience, you guys have product on the ground, it's operational, it looks great, and people are enjoying it. And, you know, it's going to serve this community for a long time. So thank you so much.
Thank you for that, Ralph. I'd also like to acknowledge the amount of time that Kathy has put into this, and I think her countless hours.
Sorry. Can I just bless you for saying that, but I have to say, I delegated in a floodwater fashion to our Alex, to Holly, to Hill. There were many, many, many staffers that were involved in this, and all I had to do was just keep going, what's going on with it? Are we gonna make the deadline? That's all I had to keep doing. So my thanks and appreciation goes to Debbie and her team, Dan and his team, SimCog Group. And we all learned a lot along the way throughout this about the extraordinary amount of work that it does take to pull something like this, to get us into the starting gate. We're not even across the finish line, right? We're just applying at this point. So, you know, God willing and the creek don't rise, as they say, that we'll be successful in this, but it is truly a group spirit and effort, as Alderman LeBlanc commented. Thank you. I'd love to take the credit, but it ain't mine this time. But
I
thank you.
think you've surrounded yourself with a great team to make things like this happen. So where was I? Madam Clerk, would you provide a roll call vote, please?
Lucas? Denham?
Yes.
Cooper?
Yes.
Howden? LeBlanc?
Take an arty stance. Yes.
Schultz?
Yes.
The result of the vote is 6-0, motion carries. Your Honor, the next item is a resolution of support and authorization of application for CDBG DR funds to aid in the development of affordable housing by Elevate Branson for a project known as New Horizon Apartments located at 210 Gretna Road, Branson, Missouri.
Now have a staff report from Alex.
Good evening, Mayor and Board. I'd like to introduce you to Brian Stallings, co-founder and CEO of Elevate Branson. This item in particular is a resolution for support for the New Horizon Apartments. Brian will get into the details on it. However, it's an existing 4-story wood frame building, which they plan to turn into 18 total units with an estimated project cost of $1.79 million. So I will kick it over to Brian Stallings to provide a summary of his project. And thank you, Brian.
Board, Mayor, 4.5 years ago, I think we were doing the same thing for our existing project. It's the same bucket of money, the DR funds. And so since that time, we've had the opportunity to kind of lay out a little bit of what we're hoping the big vision will be. Although at the very bottom here, at the south end, is where the motel would be. That timing of it just kind of popped up, the opportunity at the same time this grant did. So the owner of that motel had reached out to see if we'd be interested in purchasing it. And so what we're talking about in this grant is for the purchase and rehab of the old Motel 9 property located in the adjoining parking lot of Elevate Branson. So Elevate Branson is this building right there. And the renovation would be for 18 two-bedroom apartment units, potentially for single parents with children. That would be our goal. The property is currently zoned community commercial, so we wouldn't have to do any rezoning. It's out of the entertainment district, And it would be a very good complement to the Elevate Community tiny house development because it would offer multifamily. And then it also allows expansion of our existing kids programming and services. So we have an all-natural playground there in the back. We have a sensory room, a therapy dog. We have summer school and after-school programming there. And so this would be a great just complement to what we're doing. And that's kind of a broad picture of where it's located, just to give you an idea from street view. Okay, so I guess we will pause on that one because it's a separate application. So what questions can I answer?
Do I have a motion adopting this resolution?
So move.
We have a motion and a second. Any members of the board wishing to speak regarding this matter?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
First of all, thanks for submitting the applications, working with the city on that to get them ready to submit, I should say. Appreciate that. Some questions for you so in this case, is the entire project financed through the grant? There's no additional financing?
I believe there's a little bit outside of the grant. I think it was a little over 2.5 million. So 80 or 90,000 would be Elevate's responsibility.
Okay, so you're cash financing that, or you'll be borrowing money for that?
We'll cash finance that.
Okay. And then I understand the property currently is not your property. Do you have it under contract?
We don't yet. We're waiting to actually, for the result of this meeting, if we can apply, then we will get it under contract. I have been in conversation with the owner, so he is aware that we're just going through this process.
And so you're pretty well assured on the purchase price that you reflected in the documents then?
Yeah, that was based on an appraisal. And so we had that property appraised. He's got a copy of that. I told him that's the appraised price. That's what we would pay for it. He's been verbally in agreement to that.
Okay. Who's going to essentially run this project for you and ensure the timely completion of the project?
We will bid that out to a contractor. And then, of course, I'll oversee that project as well.
I saw you had some drawings from a architect already. Is that the architect that'll stay engaged in the project?
Well, I would hope so, but I believe we have to bid that process out under CDBG guidelines.
Okay. And then I noticed on the base grant amount, you had $100,000 in there for civil engineering under your architect's estimate. What was that for?
That would have been for his fees, architectural fees, I believe.
No, there's a separate architectural fee, but there's $100,000 for civil engineering.
Can I look at that? Alex, do you have that? I'm not seeing the 100,000.
It was in your architect's detail estimate of expenses. I believe your architect was Mr. Long.
I'm not sure what he has that in there for. The only thing I can think of is that there was an issue with maybe having a water line leak on that property, and it may be to do the engineering of putting in a new water line. So the engineering from the main, from the road down to the motel. That would be the only civil engineering I
Yeah,
would be aware of.
I couldn't come up with anything either, and
Yeah.
that sounds like an awful lot for a broken water line. I could understand it if you were putting in a new water line and had to cut rock, but
Well, it'd be cut in parking lot probably. And I don't know that they know where it's at because this property was built in 1984 in the county.
okay.
Do you know what?
So the document you're looking at is an alternative to justify the affordability of pursuing the apartment rehab. What you're reading is an alternative that proves that this project is the better affordable option. So according to the pro forma, there's no civil engineering on the apartment rehab.
Okay, good, thank you. Okay, so then I was looking at the pictures that you provided of the current interior of the unit, and
In the appraisal?
yeah,
Yeah.
well, I don't know where the pictures came from, but it was basically stud walls, everything ripped out.
Right.
Pictures. And I understand there's no current open building permits with that building. You know, looking at 4 stories and the density of the housing, have you planned for sprinkler systems in there?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then I noticed the ADA compliance requirements, which of course is critical to this whole application process. Elevator required?
It is not.
Okay. Even with 4 stories?
From what the architect told me, we would not be required to put in an elevator.
Okay. And then have you estimated your market and affordable rates for the units in there?
Yeah, so we're looking at 650, but it'd be based on income, but that should be significantly lower than what's available in the Branson area.
That's my questions, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? 4 stories with no elevator, if that just seems odd to me, but apparently that's been approved. And when you're going with 4 stories, you said there were going to be 18 total units?
18 total 2-bedroom units.
Okay. And then your parking would accommodate?
Yeah, the idea would be also to take out that pool. You see a pool kind of on the, see if I can go back to the aerial.
There you go.
So there's a pool right there.
Okay.
So it would be to take that pool out. That would also free up additional parking. But we have a cross-parking agreement with that facility, so there's plenty of parking between the two.
Holly, what we're approving tonight, the question I have is, with Elevate not owning this property, we're going to be approving a grant for Elevate for this property.
Just to apply.
I'm sorry. Okay,
Yes.
just to apply.
So we're
So that'll be
applying.
all cleared up
Yeah.
when it's, okay.
And so then if we are awarded a grant, you guys approved tonight, and a grant is awarded, it is for this property. So CDBG, when they award, they have those restrictions, both this developer and this property. If any of those changes were requested, they then would consider that within the parameters of the grant. So I'm assuming your question is, what if they can't buy it? That would be what would be looked at.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so if we're awarded, that's the first thing we'll do, right, is try to acquire the property. And if for whatever reason that changes, then that would probably kill the deal, right?
Yeah, okay. Any other comments from the board?
Brian, do you have a commercial inspection done on the property at all?
Have I had?
Yeah.
No.
Any particular reason why?
Well, we don't own it yet. So,
Well, you would do an inspection before you owned it.
well, we did an appraisal on it. I mean, there's not a whole lot to inspect. He's got it gutted on the inside. It needs a total rehab. I mean, it's a, 40-year-old motel. So it would really, he put a new roof on it this year, but, I mean, it needs new electrical, plumbing, all that stuff in there.
Where was the appraisal? What was the appraisal again?
680, which is about 300 too much.
So all the construction that's been done to date has all been under City of Branson permits and,
No, I don't think so. Yeah, no, when I went to the Open for Business meeting, the owner had told the appraiser that he had it laid out for 30 units. Well, you can't have 30 units there. So he spent money putting in doors, windows, and mini splits that he can't have because he never went through a permitting process. So this would be to clean it up, fix it up, do it right, make sure it's done.
Any other questions? Hearing none, you ready to vote? Let's please vote this. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? Did you push your button?
No.
Did you get that, Hill?
So I have 4 yeses, Alderman Schultz, LeBlanc, Howden, Cooper, and 2 noes, Denham and Lucas. Is that correct?
I'm a no on it also.
Okay, sorry about that. So that is 3 yeses, but the affirmatives were Cooper, Schultz, and Howden. Is that correct? So we have 3 yeses and 3 nos, and the mayor knows what that means. And for those of you who don't, the mayor does vote to break a tie.
I know we're in the middle of a vote. Could I ask for additional comments, or is that permitted?
Yes, I mean, the votes are on the floor, so yes, you can discuss.
I would like the 3 noes, if you don't mind, sharing with me what your thoughts are.
Mr. Mayor, I fully support Elevate Branson. I think they do a great job. My concern is there are some, from what I heard tonight, there's too many things that I didn't get a real warm, fuzzy feeling about. Not owning the property is one. The elevator situation is another one. And I'm not sure if the full amount of what it would cost to rehab that is actually known.
Mr. Mayor, my concerns, 2 of them, the elevator is one. The second is, to date, there have been no permits, no inspections, that we have no idea what that would be to bring that up to code, and that would be part of the costs. So I don't think we have enough information. That is why I voted no.
And I'm kind of like in alignment with that as far as the aforementioned items mentioned. But, you know, in an attempt to, you know, Brian, what you do, again, thank you for all that you do for the community and things like that. But, you know, looking at this, and I know it's probably been a short notice, but, you know, when I asked about the inspection, it's simply just, you know, like, where are you flush at, I guess, in purchasing that property? Because, you know, you might have an idea that, hey, demo will be this, but demo will be exponentially more. And I think there may be some cost discrepancies, and the fact that, you know, you mentioned the 80 or 90,000 above the project projected cost is going to be cash financed by Elevate. And I don't know that you truly know what that number is. And, you know, so I was just very, I guess, not 100% secure on all of the information present. You know, obviously, we're doing everything that we can to provide that affordable necessity. But, you know, again, we want to make sure that, you know, it's a protective clause, i.e. for the city and also for yourself. I mean, do you truly know, like, what you're biting off here? And I'm just speaking. So, but I guess, you know, that's why my no came into, is just because with the price of things being done, like, I mean, cost overrun could happen so fast before you blink, and, you know, before you know it, and then you could be upside down on the property and not even realize it. So, I mean, just
So just let me address all three of those because I think it falls under the same thing. Just as a reminder, this is just to apply. So if we're awarded that grant, then the due diligence would happen before the purchase of the property, right? So if CDBG awards us that money, then we go in and we have that commercial inspection. Then we go and verify whether or not we have to have an elevator. Then that decision is made whether or not we move forward with the project or we don't. But this part is just to be able to apply to actually move forward with that process. If that makes sense. I can't really justify investing that time and money until we're awarded that grant, until we know that that money's coming. Then it makes sense. Okay, let's go invest that money. Let's do this due diligence and then make a decision at that time.
Mr. Mayor, could I just ask that our attorney just address that perspective?
He's correct that this is for an application. There is always an aspect of reality that if you apply for a grant and then do not utilize that grant, it is something that you do have to report in subsequent grant applications.
Mayor, if I may?
Sure.
I guess I'm wondering if SIMCOG can shed a little bit of light on this too, because if they do end up getting awarded the grant, and Brian does find out that maybe it's not feasible according to what he anticipated, what does that look like to the granting authority? Is that a cloud that hangs over it? Because it's the city applying, so does that then cast a shadow over the city? Or do they just say, well, this is pretty typical, it happens, no big deal? Could you come up to the mic?
Hello. So I will say that before I started, at least, we had worked with the community, applied for funding with CDBG for construction of a senior center. Again, this was before I started, so I don't have all the details, but for some reason, before the project even touched ground, per se, they had to back out. There was no repercussion to the city. The city has still applied for grants. Holly is correct that some grant applications require you to list if you've withdrawn a previous project. I'm not for sure if that's the case with CDBG, but it won't have any impact on the city's future eligibility for grant projects, especially where we're talking is if for some reason something does fall through, it would be prior to really any groundwork being done. I don't think there would be any expenses that the city would be liable for. We would know pretty much immediately if it's feasible or not, kind of upon notice of award is my thoughts.
You bet.
So one more follow-up. And maybe this is too nebulous of a question, and I'm putting you horribly on the spot tonight, so thank you for your patience. But I guess I'm looking at it because I've actually been in that role in my life as a granting authority, and then you give the money out, right? Or, I mean, you promise that the spot is taken for those dollars, and then that means other grantees, potential grantees, are told no, right? And I would imagine, I guess I'm worried, that the granting authority would be like, well, come on, why didn't you have your stuff together up front before you applied and knew what you were dealing with? Because we just told other communities' projects no, that maybe would have been more ready and they could have got that money out the door. And I know the state has been really, really good at communicating to us that they're really trying to move these dollars into our state, into our region in particular, to use those monies and leverage those dollars for the betterment of the community. I guess that'd be the thing, and maybe there isn't a real answer to it without having the granting authority, the powers that be that decide to be able to share that, and I don't even know if they would share it.
Well, I will comment to say that there are options. Number one, just to withdraw and de-obligate those funds and not pursue the project. But there's also the option of pursuing a scope amendment after the project has been awarded. It doesn't necessarily mean we can't move forward. It just means we'd have to consider some other options, whether it be different properties. But the biggest picture is CDBG does want this funding to go out to these 5 zip codes. It is their priority that this funding goes to one of these regions. So I think it would be more in their interest to see what options. I don't think they would shut it down immediately or require us to. I think they would work with us to find another feasible solution. Because again, the ultimate goal is to get this funding out to these zip codes and support affordable housing.
And I hear what you're saying, Kathy. I hear a lot of, I don't think so, or probably not, but I'd really want to be, if there's somebody that can give you that definite answer, because you don't want to black mark, you know, oh, it's that city of Branson again. Last time we gave them this money, they didn't use it, but, you know, I get your point. And who has that answer? Does somebody have that answer?
I can tell you that we fill out grant applications and have been awarded grant applications in which that is one of the questions. And so you will have to answer for it. How it plays into with decision-making of awards, there is a stated requirement of those award grants.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I don't know if it helps you in all in making your decision. I'm having a little bit of a change of heart here. I believe that there are projects that have gone forward and put in an application that do have all these answers and yet have gotten no's, right? So any positioning that we're placing ourselves on the back foot of having, you know, a lack of knowledge on some of those concrete details, I would see it as having an effect on us going forward of the ability to get future grants.
Okay. I have heard from everybody, and I need to say that I support the aldermen that are opposed to this, so I'm going to vote no.
Okay.
So the result of the vote, Madam Clerk?
Is 4 no, 3 yes. Motion fails. So, Your Honor, the next item is a resolution of support and authorization of application for CDBG DR funds to aid in the development of affordable housing by Elevate Branson for a project known as the Tiny Home Village located at 350 Gretna Road, Branson, Missouri.
We'll now get a staff report from Alex.
Good evening, Mayor and Board. The item before you is regards to Elevate Branson's second project. This is in regards to the tiny homes. Most notably, this project is for 20 units. It's a continuation of, on the same site as the first round of CDBG grant award money that was awarded a few years back. I would kick it over to Brian here to give an overview of his design and project and explain all of the things to do with it. Thank you very much, Brian.
Thanks, Alex. So as he stated, this is just a continuation of the existing DR grant that we have in place right now for the development of our tiny house community, which is located adjacent to the Elevate Branson facility on 5 acres. The original grant proposal with CDBG was for the infrastructure. Our obligation was for 48 tiny homes as part of the CDBG match. We've received additional awards now from Federal Home Loan Bank of Des Moines for 24 homes, the state of Missouri ARPA for 18 homes, and various foundations for an additional 6 homes. We actually were able to engineer the site to actually have 71 homes. So this grant proposal is for an additional 20 homes within that development. And that's kind of what's in the dotted lines is what the existing grant is covering as far as infrastructure goes. And I think that's it.
Who's the pretty lady in the picture?
I don't know that lady.
We all know that lady. So Brian, just to recap, this board has already approved the grant for the not for the units, but for the infrastructure.
For the infrastructure.
For the infrastructure for the 48 units. You have the financing for the 24, the 18, and the 6.
Right, 48.
So your request tonight is simply to add funds to increase infrastructure for more homes.
No, to increase the number of homes, not for the infrastructure, just the homes. So the infrastructure will already be in place.
So
Now, I say that with the mains are already in place. We do have to take some infrastructure from the main to the homes. So the private water lines, the private utility lines, private sewer.
Okay, so this one is different where the initial approval was for the infrastructure.
Public infrastructure, yeah.
Yes, yeah. And this one is for the 20 homes themselves.
Right, correct.
Okay. Do I have a motion adopting this resolution?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any members of the board wish to address this?
Mr. Mayor. So on your existing project there, I understand you ran into some difficulties with Indian artifacts or something and kind of delayed it.
Bats, Indians, Corps of Engineers, trees.
All the usual project things, yeah. I grew up in Wisconsin, so I know the Indian thing. My question is, where are you with that? I heard that it's now more expensive than what you originally anticipated, and so you've got a deficiency between the grant amount and what you need to finish the infrastructure?
Correct. So the bid went out last week, and the bid that we received was about double of the infrastructure costs. So that budget was submitted before COVID. So, you know, we were basing it on prices then. Construction prices have gone way up. So Kelsey with SIMCOG is working with CDBG to see if they will allocate more funds. I mean, we have several options that we're working through. Either CDBG allocating more funds for the infrastructure to meet the bidder's request, change the scope of work, or rebid the project. So that's kind of where we're at.
I assume the additional homes, so that we're talking about for this grant, are fully dependent on the success of that phase of the project.
Yeah, all the homes are dependent really on getting the infrastructure. Now, if we have to change the scope of work to maybe half the project or 3/4 of the project, we'd still be okay home-wise. Because we can move some of the foundation homes to a later date when we would be able to finish out the infrastructure.
I recall in your original campaigns for the tiny homes, wasn't there also some corporate sponsorships of homes and other money coming in?
There is, because there's some private infrastructure that we have to, Elevate has to pay for. And so the sponsorship of those homes allow that to happen. So we have some buildings we'd like to put in there, an outdoor theater. I mean, there's some of their costs associated with the project that Elevate will absorb.
And that's through those other corporate gifts and so on?
Yeah.
Because I've seen corporations say, oh, I'm sponsoring one of these tiny homes.
Correct. We have about 30 of them fully sponsored right now.
So does that mean they fully pay for that home, that tiny home, when they say sponsor?
No. It means, like the grants that we've acquired, Federal Home Loan Bank, ARPA, those will pay for the home themselves. That additional money will help pay for curb and guttering on the private roads, utilities that go from the mains to the houses. Those kind of
Okay.
things.
I see. I didn't catch that, by the way.
Foundations for the houses.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Maybe if I can just add one, if I'm not monopolizing.
I'm sorry, your
Could you
time
just
was up.
speak to your anticipated market and affordable rates for the homes?
Well, with our grants, they are at 50% of the area median income. So we have actually set, our Federal Home Loan Bank grant was actually set at $400 a month, utilities included. So they're extremely low. With the CDBG grant, obviously we can go up to 80%. So we could raise that amount a little bit, but probably won't do it initially. We'd like to keep everything very affordable for individuals.
I just want to clarify. In his question, so when someone sponsored a home, that home wasn't purchased, that was, what, did they get their name on the home or
Yeah,
something like that?
there's different sponsorship packages. They get to put a sign on the house. They get to name the house, you know.
And they knew that when they sponsored the home?
They do that when they sponsor the home.
Okay.
There's furniture packages that they can sponsor. There's just different things that individuals or.
And then with those sponsorship funds, because you kind of mixed it into infrastructure, but then you talked about other buildings and outdoor theaters.
Yeah, it's
and
just
things
raising
like
money.
that.
The sponsorships of the homes allow us to fund other things within that community.
Right.
So could be utility lines, could be curb and guttering, could be other buildings in there, could be outdoor. I mean, it just allows us to do different things with that sponsorship within the same community.
You're at how many? 48 minus, not the 20 asked for tonight, but.
Right. We're at 48.
48 is what you're.
Yeah. And we can have up to 71 based on engineering. So it's just another avenue to get those additional homes funded.
Okay, just for clarification, the first grant was for infrastructure only.
Only,
So nothing was ever applied for the tiny homes.
correct.
Okay.
That was our obligation as part of that grant match, was that we would find ways to fund the houses to go on top of the infrastructure.
Okay, so for the first grant that you're being able to move forward on right now, what is the difference in costs between what the grant is and the money that you'll need to, however you finance the rest of it?
For the infrastructure or for the houses?
No, just for the first grant, just to finish it off.
Okay.
The original CDGB disaster funding was 1.94 million. That's for the design and construction. That's the infrastructure side. What that includes is a street extending from Gretna Road, 2 detention ponds, 8-inch public water main, 8-inch gravity sewer main, and possibly a mid-block pedestrian crossing. The sub-applicant or the private donor side of this was 2.45 million, and that was intended for the little homes, or the tiny homes, excuse me.
So just for clarity, the original grant was 1.94. You've gone out to bid. Infrastructure cost came back at, what'd you, 3.2?
Roughly 3.2.
Is,
Brian, the difference, how are you gonna make up the difference between the 1.94 and the 3.2?
Well, those are some of the options that we're working through right now. One
But
is
it'll
going
be-
back to SIMCOG, right? And
And try
asking
to
for,
increase it, because
Yep.
the limit is 2.8. No, this is different money. Got it. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
yeah, because that budget was set before COVID. I mean, I think they've experienced this, so going back, asking for additional funds. They haven't said no, they haven't said yes on that. If they say no, you have to use the funds you have, then we'll have to look at the scope of work, maybe adjusting the scope that's done and maybe phase it. And then the third option is going back out to bid and seeing if, somebody would bid lower.
Artie?
This request that we're putting in for the application is for phase 2 and 3? Is that right?
Well, it's not really in phases right now. It would just be additional houses for the development. I mean, the best case scenario is CDBG comes back and says, here's more money to get it to the bidder, and everything's done at one time. And hopefully we don't have to phase anything.
And I'm confident there's a demand, you have a
Yeah.
list, yeah, there won't be an issue with that, yeah, that the demand at these rents, there's no issue with absorption,
Now, we have 150 on the waiting list already.
yeah.
Just in terms of the homes themselves, are these modular homes? Are you building them on site? How does that work?
They're built off-site, but they are brought in and set on foundations, so they're permanent structures. They are Energy Star rated, and they have sprinklers in them.
And are you pretty sure of your costs on those homes in terms of what's been submitted for the grant?
Yes. I'm in regular conversation with the builder because of the other grants. Those houses are being built now.
With the recognition that you're going to be staging this fairly far out into the future, I assume, if you're awarded this grant, because you've got infrastructure to do and all
He's
the other
aware.
things?
Yeah, he's just glad to hear we were out to bid. We've been doing this for 4 years.
Yeah.
There is a physical unit out there.
Yeah. No, I'm looking at, we've got a 3-year window from the time of award to completion of the project.
They knock out about a house a week.
My concern is there's this queue up time to not only figure out how to fund the infrastructure, but then to actually get the infrastructure in. And when you add that on to the project timeline.
You want to speak to that, Kelsey?
Hello. So just to clarify, there is no hard requirement that this project is complete in 3 years. It's a standard traditional project performance period that CDBG recommends for all projects. As you guys are aware, this current infrastructure project has exceeded the 3 years. There's no consequence, there's no risk or poor looking upon the city for that. We just have to justify the reasons, and as Brian said, COVID, obviously, there was turnover with SIMCOG, turnover with the city, and just multiple issues we've dealt with during the environmental review phase. I will touch on just initially, there is going to be, I would estimate, 3 months or more until notification of award after these applications are submitted. After that period, we would initiate environmental review. Since most of this land has already been under environmental review, I don't expect another repeat. However, there should be enough time in between of the current infrastructure that I don't see any delay, mainly because CDBG is a kind of a slow-moving creature, and there's lots of steps that you have to take before you are authorized and approved to start that construction.
But speak to the timing, though, on this request to CBG for additional funding to finish the initial infrastructure?
Yes, we are pushing for that to be sped up as soon as possible. We have submitted everything CDBG's requested, aside from the newspaper affidavit publication, which I know is kind of being searched for at the city right now. But they're currently reviewing everything we've submitted. We've shared the full vendor distribution list of almost 2,000 professional contractors, in addition to multiple articles that were published advertising the bid, along with the city website, Brian's, and SIMCOG's website. And so far, as like Brian said, there's not been any sort of indication necessarily yes or no, but to me, it seems like we are in a favorable position to be granted that increase. I will also clarify that the round that Brian initially was awarded for the infrastructure is it's the same pot of funds, but each funding cycle has different specific categories of eligible activities. And in the first round, there was only a public infrastructure in support of affordable housing. There was not a construction of multifamily or construction of affordable housing as an option. So this cycle is a little different, that it does allow for grant funds to be used for the construction of those affordable homes. And, oh,
Can
sorry.
you hit the timing, though, so you've submitted a request for these additional funds. Based on your experience, when should you hear the results of that?
We are still waiting on the signed signature from the mayor for that budget amendment. We've submitted all of our justification materials to prove that we have solicited an adequate number of contractors for that project. So we've sent in the draft budget amendment basically for their pre-review to authorize that request.
So if the mayor were to sign tomorrow, what's your expected timing to hear from the state?
I am shooting for less than 2 weeks, and I absolutely stand by that because we know we're all kind of pushing to get these applications submitted for the current round. So it's ideal that we try to execute that increase prior to that deadline.
Is that deadline?
May 17th.
What's the date today?
And it's not a hard deadline, I will say. That's our goal. And again, CDBG is a slow-moving creature, so we will work with them. But we've had many conversations, and it's in the feed for review right now. And again, I feel like if CDBG wasn't willing to consider this option, they would have immediately shut it down. But they are interested in our solicitation efforts, and like I said, we've submitted draft increase materials, just waiting for their response and kind of going through the chain of getting those documents authorized by the board here.
And I don't mean this rude, but is there a reason where we waited till now and then we've got a week to hit a deadline? Or, it kind of feels pressured.
So we had been working on this for a number of months, actually a number of weeks. As part of the due diligence of the city, right, is making sure we have all the information basically to answer all the questions that were asked today, right? That information, of course, is in consultation with the developer or the applicant, the sub-applicant. Sometimes that information takes a while to generate. It takes a while to compile, something we need to review. I'll tell you, I wouldn't imagine we're the only ones in this situation because DED did extend the deadline out to the 17th. So to be honest, a lot of this is we can only go so fast as what the information we receive from the sub-applicant. Not so much not to point out Brian or DHTC, but frankly, that is the situation. We needed to feel comfortable to create a package that protects the city, that answers the questions that you all would ask, and feel comfortable moving forward. So in doing so, that takes legal time, that takes staff time, and we don't want to put something in front of you that isn't going to meet a threshold or provide you with information you can't make a good decision on.
Well, yeah, and don't take my remarks, they weren't pointed towards you or the staff. I just, wherever that started, I appreciate y'all going through the due diligence and making sure everything's safe. I'm just, maybe it didn't get to you guys soon enough or something.
Clay, not all government entities work as fast as the city of Branson.
Now, you mentioned, or I'm sorry, you didn't, Alex, but you mentioned that you were waiting on a signature from the mayor.
Yes, if this gets approved, if this board approves it, I'll be signing this tonight.
I'm not sure if that part is in this agenda. I think we were mainly focusing on the current applications, but it has been passed off to our city staff representative, Cheryl, who I believe is in the works of getting that in front of you. But at least we have submitted everything to CDBG that they need, so they can still review simultaneously to us getting the signature. So nothing will change on those forms aside from the signature being there.
Is it appropriate to ask Kathy and Alex what their comfort level is at this point?
I didn't mean to laugh like all the way out loud. I will tell you, we have worked really hard, working with the team at SIMCOG, working with the applicants, Brian and DHTC as well. And I'm going to dance around this one a little bit, only to say that our job is to put together a package that, like Alex has articulated, that we feel has the city's interests represented appropriately, but it's ultimately a policy decision on if you feel comfortable enough, given the information that you have in front of you, and you believe that this particular project is going to meet the objectives that you all have for the city of Branson regarding dealing with, in particular on this project, the clientele that Brian and his team are trying to serve. And if you want to be supportive of that through authorizing them to move forward to get money to continue, that's purely a political decision. It would be a policy decision and not something staff should really weigh in on.
That was a long answer with no answer.
What you meant, Clay, what you meant to ask was, if you were asked to sign this, would you have signed it?
That, yeah, I just didn't want to be that direct, but yes, Mayor.
Same answer.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I want to ask a question about the financing of this grant, not the one we were talking about, not the older one, but the one you want to apply for here. So the grant's for $2 million, right, in this case? Grant request?
That's correct. Yeah.
Is there additional financing for the project outside of that?
Well, yeah, I mean, not on this particular project. I mean, that covers all 20 houses. But on the overall project, yes. As we talked about, we had to do a match. We have a match with the original CDBG DR grant.
So this request will pay for the additional 20 homes.
20 houses, yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
And those 20 homes can go in the first phase, right?
Yeah,
It doesn't have to be the last one.
Right, no.
Yeah.
I was going to add, you spoke on that first round of granting was specific for infrastructure, and you said the second round was for housing, and you said and then someone interrupted you. I wanted to know what the "and" was.
Thank you for bringing me back to that point. So the first round of this funding did have different limits of thresholds for the grant award amount. So the current grant cycle that we're looking at for construction of affordable houses has the 2.5 million limit plus the excess of professional services described as engineering, administration, architectural, lawyer. Those can also go on top and be included in the total grant amount. The initial round of funding that Brian was awarded under does not have that 2.5 limit. There was no award maximum listed in those application guidelines. So that's why we don't think asking for this increase is for the original grant is going to come back with an issue of exceeding the maximum of that threshold. So they are very different funding categories, although it is kind of still, again, out of that same pot of funding. Each category has its own specific requirements and thresholds. So again, there's not a 2.5 limit associated with the first initial project. It's only for the current round that we're looking at applying.
So to that, if that amount goes up, does that match number go up or the match number stays the same?
For the original project, no, there's no increase to the match required. There's not even a match required for this current round. So the original project has probably exceeded CDBG's expectations. Most projects usually, if they do put in a match, is around 5 to 10%. We did inquire, there is no benefit in the application grading if you are putting in a match, but the original project was almost double the amount of grant award requested as part of the match. So it shows that our contribution and our commitment to the project is really represented by that large match amount. But to answer your question, there's no effect of the increase of the match on the current project. And if I can, I will also just,
I'll ask after, go ahead and say what you were going to say.
I was just going to say that this funding is not something that's going to come around next year. This is very unique funding associated with what Alex said as a response to the 2017 flooding event. And that's why these funds are dedicated to this region. It's not necessarily something that might come up again. We might not see this type of funding available for another until another disaster strikes, which nobody wants anyway. So it's kind of a very finite opportunity. It's a very unique opportunity that's presented itself to Branson. So again, I just think this is a really valuable option to consider.
Okay, so with this funding, can money from this amount, allotment, be used for infrastructure?
There can be for the private infrastructure. Again, the first grant is covering all public infrastructure, but Brian is going to be responsible for connecting any private utilities as needed. But this current round does include the private infrastructure for those 20 houses only. So these are going to be separate if that arises.
Is there a specific order it goes in to not go towards the new requested units to be placed, to be constructed?
We've identified which homes are going to be the 20 under this project. So those would be essentially off limits. The funding under this application would be fully dedicated to the construction of those homes and private infrastructure connection as needed only for those 20 homes. The remaining 48 homes, Brian will be responsible for that private infrastructure connection. They will be 100% separate. We don't want to overlap any of this.
Okay, so there's a possibility that I'm just trying to figure out, because I know that, the city is responsible, so just want to be very responsible with what we approve. Say, for whatever reasons, I don't know with costs, that this money would all need to go towards the private infrastructure. That would still not touch the tiny homes, but that money would be allowed to be used for the private infrastructure?
I'm sorry, but I'm not sure if I quite understand.
Only for those 20.
Only for those, what I heard her say was, out of this amount, it is to go towards the 20 homes, and it can also include the infrastructure for these 20 homes only.
Correct. But again, the original 48 homes in the first project, that would be responsibility of Brian. But the proposed 20 homes could include the construction and private infrastructure connection as a whole. And again, we are going after a 2 million grant request here. There is a limit of 2.5, so there is quite a lot of room, if needed, to increase that if anything arises down the road.
I have a question for city staff. I don't know if it's Alex or Holly, but is there a bonding issue in this agreement as well?
There's not a bonding clause because there's not a gap financing. 100% would be paid based on the estimates for the grant requirement.
Thank you.
And just to, I guess, kind of give you an idea, this is really similar to the ARPA grant that we were awarded. So the ARPA grant was for 18 homes. The CDBG grant is for 20 homes. So they're very similar as far as scope and requirements.
So what you were just saying there were the original back.
Our match was for 48 homes. Yeah. We wanted to under-promise and over-deliver. So we were able to engineer it for 71 homes. We could have left it at 48, but we wanted to put more homes in.
How many of those 48 are done?
Well, none of them are done because we haven't done any infrastructure yet. So the ARPA money has to be spent by, I think it's October of 2026. So realistically, we should be able to easily accomplish that, assuming we can get going on the infrastructure now that we're through the bid process.
So Brian, you could continue thinking. I'm just interrupting. So for you to pull the trigger and get this going, you need to come up with $1.3 million.
If we want to develop the entire 5 acres.
Okay,
Correct.
so your bid came in at 3.2 to do the whole thing.
Correct.
You could phase this and build X amount of infrastructure to accommodate 20 homes.
Well, probably closer to 40 homes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but that's my point.
Yes.
So we're not really looking at a gap of funding here. You already have the initial grant money.
We have almost, with all the grants, almost $5 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which at the end of the day, if nothing else changes, you'll have as many homes and infrastructure done short of $1.2 million to complete the balance of it,
Correct.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. And, I mean, if CDBG comes back and says, we're just going to give you this money, we phase it, we do half of it now, we apply for another grant award for the other infrastructure half at some point.
Yeah.
You say you've already got $5 million worth of grants?
Roughly, when you look at the 24 homes from Federal Home Loan Bank, the 18 from ARPA, the foundations, and then the sponsorships, it's roughly $5 million raised so far.
Any other aldermen?
And I don't know if, I know it's too late on the other project, but I don't know if this makes a difference. Since we're not changing the structure of that motel, I don't think there's an elevator required because it's existing.
You're right, that's,
Oh, there is.
yeah, that's,
I'll have to have that conversation with the architect.
that's.
That would be a change of use, so it has a certificate of occupancy.
It doesn't
for
matter,
lodging.
the decision's been
Yeah,
made
it's
and we're moving on to new things. So, I'd like to bring this to a vote unless there's other comments or questions the board has.
I guess I'll ask one more if I
You
may.
bet.
You know, you got a lot of balls in the air on this project, a lot of funding sitting there, and I'm seeing one person that told me on the other project you'd kind of be running it. Are you staffed up to be able to unleash this kind of development and manage it properly?
Well, the nice thing about this is that it all goes out for bid. So there's contractors that, you know, will actually be running it. I'll just be kind of in communication with them. I don't have to make some of those construction decisions.
So I've been involved in $100 million type build-outs, and that may be a bit optimistic to look at it that way. I think you're going to be a very busy person when you kick off these projects.
Well, yeah, I mean, busy is just a way of life now. So, but yes, we have staff. I have operations people that can run day-to-day things while I'm doing the nitty-gritty.
If I can add too, SIMCOG is the grants administrator for the current project. We oversee all grant requirements, any documents, contracts, selection of contractor, Davis-Bacon Act requirements. We're highly involved with the overall construction and a lot of aspects as well. So we're kind of a good team. It's been great working with the city and Brian on these projects. I think we have a really good rapport with CDBG from our experience. So again, I'm very excited to see about these projects' potential.
I agree. I agree with what you just said, but that's not the level of project management I was thinking of. I mean, there are change requests that have to be approved. There's engineering orders that have to be looked at. There's a significant amount of things that come back to the owner to make decisions on, and I don't believe you're in the decision-making role on those things. You're overlooking the performance and contractual issues of those things, correct? No, correct?
Yeah, she is, but also the city is very involved in that, right? So with engineering and public works department, those are conversations that we have to have. I can't make those decisions on my own. So when those change orders come up, those are conversations that Michael Woods' team and all of us combined will have those conversations.
Yeah, I was thinking more of the 20 home part of the project. I wasn't really speaking of your infrastructure issue.
That part's easy. The houses are built off-site. They come in on a truck. We set them on a foundation, do the hookups. I mean, those are relatively easy conversations to have.
Ruth?
I would just like to make a comment. I really, really appreciate Elevate Branson. Unfortunately, because we've been blessed with healing, I do understand what it's like to be a family member of someone that has a substance abuse problem and the destruction, but then the healing that can come when someone does get help. I back your project so much. But it sounds like with the money that's already there, a portion of this project can get completed. Then the public can see, yes, the money has gone towards good use. The project's getting completed. They can see some of the project come to fruition before any more monies are approved, because it's been promised for quite a while, and people ask, how come? And I know that there's certain reasons, but if there's money there to complete a phase of the project, it seems like it would be a good idea to show the community that the money's being used to do completion instead of keep extending the project. That's my opinion.
I would agree wholeheartedly. We're not extending anything. I mean, it went out for bid last week. Yeah, that's when we got the bids, back last week. So this is just an opportunity to fund it, to finish the whole project and get it completed and not have to phase it.
Is there a specific order the monies have to be used for? Because you have some monies that are already sitting there. I know one has a October 27 or whatever deadline, but I mean.
No, there's
like
not, there's not an order that we have
order.
to do them in.
So you specifically said we have an idea of where these 20 are going to go.
Yeah.
Where are they going to go?
Well, we submitted a plat, basically, that showed where those are. I don't know if you have that packet or not. Well, it's based on this, but they're identified. So if you look, each one of these houses have a number. And in the grant application material, they're identified which houses are the CDBG.
I need to speak in the mic so everybody can hear you, please.
Can people not hear her?
Never been not heard. It's in the grade portions on the corners, so the ones that are grayed in.
It's my meeting. Yeah, thank you. That's very appropriate. Isn't that a shame? Okay, so what are we looking at?
The gray ones are.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Is it your projection to do those first, or what is?
We can. I mean, some of that will be decided by the contractor doing the infrastructure. So I think in the bid documents, we asked to have them phase how they do the infrastructure so that we can come behind them and put houses on the ground as they're doing the infrastructure. So that would just be the discussion in the construction planning meeting.
Heidi and Ruth, you okay with that? I don't need it. Any other aldermen have any questions?
I just have a comment
okay.
that I heard tonight and I've read in the past. You know, there had been some turnover in the city, but I could tell you nothing fell through the cracks and nothing was pushed out of the way and nothing was put on hold as a result of that. In fact, it was the skeleton crew of a city staff that buckled down and handled exponentially more than they were required to handle. So the idea that, you know, the turnover of city staff had some delay, I mean, like I was here, I was sitting in meetings, I watched these people work, and to kind of, I don't know, to kind of say that that's what happened, that didn't happen here. I can tell you the level of responsibility of the people that were here were all hands on deck, and everybody was not only pushing their weight, but 10 times more. So I just want to acknowledge that.
Yeah, this staff and board have been great to work with. I mean, they've been, Michael and his team have been great, but in the beginning, there was some, you know, when everything was going on, it did create some delay in just the selection of the engineer. But didn't have an impact on the project as far as the bats, the trees, the Indians, and the Corps of Engineers.
Okay, let's get back to the issue at hand. Any other aldermen have any questions before we vote? Hearing none, let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Nay.
Madam Clerk, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Lucas? Denham?
No.
Cooper?
No.
Howden? LeBlanc? Schultz?
Yes.
The result of the vote is 5 noes, 1 yes. Motion fails.
Okay, thank you.
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill number 6442, an ordinance approving the documents related to 2 affordable housing development projects with Elevate Branson to apply for Department of Economic Development CDBG DR housing program funds and authorizing the mayor to execute the documents related thereto.
You've heard the first reading of Bill 6442. We'll now have a staff report from Elevate.
So I think Holly was going to say something on this.
Procedurally, we need that, those 2 resolutions that you, that failed as part of the package. So there's some options here. You can go ahead and proceed with the ordinance, but this ordinance has no value because we couldn't apply without the resolution. You could, however, in the hope of a future position to apply again for grants, postpone this ordinance indefinitely if there was a motion and a second, then it would stay on your potential to pull down at any point in the next year during this legislative session, so that if this opportunity comes around, we're already in place and nothing wasted.
Okay?
And from my perspective, I think that's kind of where it sits, simply because I definitely don't think this is a bad project. I just think from a timing perspective, it's, I mean, you know, as Alderman Schultz said, like, the level of focus and intensity that it's going to take to pull off and I hate to use this word, but first phase, but what you're obligated to now, I think is exponentially a lot of work. I'm working on a very similar project personally, and it's a lot of work. And so I would leave it open to come back and reapply, absolutely, 100%. But I think as Alderman Denham said, like, you know, if we see ground turning, infrastructure put in, and buildings going up, the level of happy that creates amongst this board and community, I think would be met with raving applause, for sure, Brian. Like, this is not a no against any of your work and what you do. This is, I think it's more of a timing situation, and just looking at, you know, it's probably a little bit of a blessing, you just don't know it.
So, in all of what you just said, did you say you wanted to move forward with this, or?
You mean you want to make a motion to postpone the ordinance indefinitely? Then it could be pulled down at any time. Of course, you have to meet the sunshine requirements, but should it be ripe again, it could be brought onto an agenda, amended in any way that's necessary. If it is not an opportunity that comes before you adjourn sine dias, then it would end and it would have to be brought forth.
So moved.
Second.
I support, yeah.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Ayes have it. So Hill, where are we at?
I believe we're at the, if anybody would like to give a report and then adjournment. Very last page.
Okay, so are there any aldermen wishing to provide any reports?
Mr. Mayor, I would just like to say thank you to the staff, not only for the work that went on to get all these documents prepared, negotiated, and so on and so forth, but particularly Artie and I, we enjoyed the briefing that the staff gave us to walk us through the intricacies of this granting process, which I've never been through before. And so I want to thank Alex and the staff for running an outstanding meeting for that, for Amanda being there, and Hillary and Holly all did a great job in getting us up to speed in terms of how these things work and the amount of effort that went into it. Very appreciative of that. Thank you.
I'd like to just follow up with what Ralph said, that I think everybody here supports the task that Elevate Branson has in their heart for the community and the people that are in need, but I agree, it just felt like maybe the cart was before the horse and just all the ducks weren't in a row. So I appreciate this, being able to pull this back down at a later date when things seem more organized. Yeah.
And Mr. Mayor, I would like to second what Glenn mentioned about all the work that the staff has done, plus the work that they put into educating Glenn and I as to everything that's going on right now to try to bring us up to speed. Greatly appreciate it.
I love this staff. They're amazing. Thank you for doing everything that you do.
Okay, I'm through with that side of the board. Any? Ralph?
You know, I think tonight's meeting, albeit special, was really special in the sense that, you know, I mean, we have talked so long about affordable housing or low-income housing, and this meeting tonight kind of really sets a precedent for how this is going to move forward and really like what it looks like. Like, you know, we've made a cake now. Like, really, we have the ingredients. Our staff has the ingredients, and this is something that, you know, for all intents and purposes, just lather, rinse, repeat, duplicate, 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 and you know, to developers, investors, whatever it is, landowners that are out there, there's opportunity there, and there's opportunity here, and you know, we want to give those opportunities. However, the due diligence has to be done. I think, you know, I kind of thought of this song earlier, what you got to love like there's no such thing as a broken heart. Well, you have to present like you own the project. And for some reason, I didn't really feel that. But I understand he loves and cares about the Elevate community, and we all do. It's just one of those things, man. If you're gonna go up to bat, you're gonna bring the best bat, and you're gonna hit the best pitch, and you just got to come prepared to play. And I think that, in essence, sets the standard and that bar for the city moving forward for all developers and investors.
My only question to you, Ralph, is how do you know the term lather, rinse, and repeat?
Well, in the early days.
Anybody else? Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.